All right, this is running on my Linux machine. Man, I had a problem with it. It turned off on its own a couple times. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I downloaded the tool I need to watch the CPU speed, because that's what that would seem like that would be. I mean, the CPU temperature, not speed. And it was running a little warm, and then I saw it drifting hot. And I had vacuumed and stuff off of the power supply fan, which at first I thought wasn't moving enough, but it was moving. And you know what it was? Simplest thing. I'll remember it forever now. The heat sinks. I only build a machine every couple years, and in the past, there was like 10 years I didn't even do that. So these heat sinks have changed a lot, and they're like these big, there's little blades and there's space, and it was full of lint. So luckily I had a can of compressed air, So I blew it out, and sure enough, that was the problem. Let's see, what's the temperature right now? It was running like 45, and then it would drift up, and once it's around 60 centigrade, that's a problem. It's kind of hot right now, 57 degrees. What the fuck? Thought I fixed it. No, I definitely addressed it, but I wonder if, well, it's doing fine. So, anyway, how'd I get on that? Okay. So I have a few things I was going to talk about. Oh, yeah, also, I'm going to open this up in case anybody's out there. Probably not. So let's see, the ID. Had a lot, huh? Often when I turn that. Okay, there's the link, the description, and then I will add it to the chat. Which has the advantage, I guess, that hello, my old. I don't even know if they can hear that. It doesn't want to pick that. It doesn't pick that kind of stuff up. I was watching the things even. Okay, so let's see, what am I doing here? That's then in the chat. All right. Well, it's good. It's loud for me, but I don't have to worry about if I'm audible. So this is from this angle. Normally it's been that computer, and then it's facing that way. So there's my machine. There's a beer bottle from earlier. Checking to see if it was from some other day. Okay. I have some notes here. So the first thing I was going to talk about is Agua rage quitted, and was saying I was passive aggressive and whatnot. And the thing about that is that I have a comments on that, and she seemed to have written a bunch of comments, and I was replying to the last one, and then they were all deleted, so I couldn't add it. So whatever. It's too bad. Said I didn't appreciate her, didn't show gratitude. And it's like, what? I mean, I'm willing to have a conversation with you, even though we're of differing opinions. What else is there? I was grateful that someone that disagrees with me would not quit the conversation and have one, but then you quit, and it's like because you didn't get enough appreciation for. You're not talking about for having the conversation, because when I respond to you, I'm showing an appreciation for that. You're talking about that I don't agree with you, and this is a big problem. I notice everybody's having trouble. Like, people can't remember other people's reasoning, how they arrived where they arrived. They hear a little bit of it, and they're like, "Oh no, that's wrong." And so they're like, "Why spend time remembering something wrong?" Right? But I happen to enjoy remembering everybody's different reasoning, and so as far as passive aggressiveness, that means that you're being disingenuous, that you're like a passive aggressive person compliments your shirt as a way to really insult it. Or, it's not what they say is not genuinely their opinion. So I will cop to be. And then she was saying, like, I try to appear to be someone that never loses their cool. Well, anybody that's been watching me, I think, for very long will have seen me lose my cool. And it is true that I would rather and try not to do that. But I'm obviously not trying to hide that. And that's aggression, not passive aggression. And I think the real issue, it has to come down to, I have claimed many times, and people, it just bounces off, or they don't hear it, or they think that can't be true. They assume that we're all here to spread our philosophies like a messiah that's radiating them. I don't deny that there's some positivity to that idea, or that, I even feel like, yeah, I should be trying to do that sometimes. For, good ideas need people behind them. And maybe that is the right way to go. And in terms of changing things up, I consider directions like that. So I'm not discounting that, but it's not really necessary for my purposes to take that kind of thing seriously, right? I've been doing the public conversation using computers and the internet and text going all the way back to the 80s. So it's been a long time, and I've kind of figured out, what is the main motivating factor. And to me, there's an assumption, and there was an assumption in the philosophy education that I received too, that you're trying to make something compelling, right? It's related to this difference between whether you're there to spread information that you have, and you got to spread it and you put it out there and convince people it's right, and so that it can be strong enough to have momentum and whatnot. Or are you collecting information? Now, I'm collecting information because, when I was younger and started this, yeah, you're trying to tell everybody what you know is right. But as I grew older, I realized, well, a lot of those things I don't really know. I find out later that they're not correct or whatever. And the real reason that I do it is because other people's ideas that do sound crazy are interesting. Some of those crazy ideas, you're like, whoa, that's cool. And a lot of more of them are like, whoa, that's interesting. I see. Nice. Wow, that's a pretty corkscrew where they landed that thing. So rather than being compelling, I like demonstrations. I like you to demonstrate your idea and diagram it and describe it as much as possible, show how you could live that way or whatever. So that's what I'm looking for in collecting these different examples of how the millions and billions and potentially infinite different ways of looking at things, life, and everything in life. And I think this difference between me and someone that thinks there's one right way to be, and that things in nature have a particular purpose, like agua, that really is what leads to this thing about, because a lot of times, it's a certain category among 3 or 5 of people, and maybe Quintica the same, when they rage quit me, they're like, it's because they think I have some other thing, and from what I'm saying, and I'm sending them a secret message that they understand, but I'm so clever that I've hidden it from the rest of reality. And it's really just a matter of we disagree. And the reason they can't, excuse me, Terrible. The reason they can't just see that the issue is we disagree, we could keep talking, or maybe it's tired and now we don't need to because we disagree and there's nothing else to talk about. Shit. But they don't see it that way. They see it as like, I must secretly agree and I'm lying. I must secretly accept their points and feel a personal defeat and realize, oh, he made that point and I accepted it, but now I'm going to make up a lie to pretend I don't accept it. So, and the reason they think that's what I must be doing is because they don't understand. I'm here to listen to your idea. If that's not grateful enough for you, who else wants to listen to your fucking lame idea? Okay, and I'm perfectly willing to admit that I like listening to the theories of crazy people. I've listened to Charles Manson's his theories of how things work. It's interesting. The fact that there's a billion so different, most of them I could never make up. If I was writing a story and making up characters, I could never imagine. Truth is stranger than fiction when it comes to the things that people think. So, um, so the other thing, item 2, is that about, segueing into, we all have our different opinions, but I'm also feeling a little bit less tolerant of people and people in my family. Um, Not intolerant of them as people that have their own opinions, but intolerant. Coughing made me want to roll a cigarette. So how healthy is that? Anyway, it's not. That's the point. Okay. Um, is the people that don't follow details. I'm kind of thinking that the democratic experiment is failing in this part where everybody thinks that that the value of their opinion is equal, because I don't know why, like, even if it's uninformed, yeah. And you end up talking with a lot of people I talk to that they just don't care about facts. Like, I have a family member that is of the opinion that the Pussygate recording of Trump was doctored. Well, Trump admitted and apologized for it and said, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But it was also doctored. And they don't want to hear any facts or anything. And people act like, oh, when you disagree with my facts, that's really rude. That's where we're supposed to disagree. And if we care about facts, we would disagree on them. We'd look into the details and we'd find out which was which. That's the straightforward part. Then you still disagree when you're interpreting them, but to just ignore the facts. And I don't think I'm a better person for covering politics my whole life in my brain, covering it, whatever, have being my own little newscasting on it about what I believed and doing my own assessment. I don't think I'm a better person at all. Long ago, got over any idea that. I realize it's just like anything else. It happens to be an interest of mine. I find it interesting, the history of it and everything else. Okay. So, and I think everybody should get involved. So I don't care how often. I don't mind when people just get involved every 4 or 2 years. I might advise that, hey, get involved in your local politics. Do get involved with the politics that happens between elections. Be positive about that, because I do believe that. But basically, you've got to be surgeons and build shit and do all kinds of stuff that it takes to have a working society, and not everybody should have to. The people that are interested naturally, like me and all the political bloggers and many of us, we should take an extra responsibility to say, well, let's do it rationally. Let's think about this rationally, because yeah, we're doing extra thinking for people that are doing other really important things, and that's actually is a responsibility. Okay. Having said that, all these people that are interested enough in politics and whatnot to have fucking opinions, that don't think they have to follow details and know the facts or agree on the facts or be able to debate the flat facts, I'm fed up with that. I have been looking at these facts for years and years. People want to say Hillary's the most corrupt politician ever. Well, That's so stupid. I mean, it's like you can't possibly know anything about American politics to think she was the most corrupt ever in American history that was even president, let alone like all politicians, because she was never president. All right, that's just, I mean, to argue that on the facts, it's like obviously, even to make that statement, you must not have looked very close. You can't possibly believe that, even if you limited yourself to other Democrats or something, partisan like that. Um, and people that think that the scrutiny on Hillary uh, was lax and it was unfair. No, it wasn't unfair in Trump. Trump has Roy Cohen, so many things, all of his lawsuits. Did they mention those? No, they mentioned his tweets that happened last night, which he's controlling the nature of those. They didn't go into a million of details that we are going to hear, like Roy Cohen. I'm not even going to tell you who that is. You're going to hear a lot more about Roy Cohen. Bernstein was mentioning him, and a lot of other things that are, the facts of the matter, and people don't look into them. They don't know it, and that's fine. But then when you try to discuss them or tell it, they act like, oh, facts are just, biased. And there's nothing you could do about that. People are going to be that way. But hello. All right, my audio is working. All right, the next thing is back on immigration. Okay, so the thing about immigration um, is this particular thing, like Gary and others are talking about, like that's not a good selling point. Being open borders not a good selling point. I told my mom recently I was open border, and she about had a heart attack, and then she didn't know what to say because she knows I'm liberal, but she doesn't know my ideas because I tell her, and she just thinks they're from some liberal pamphlet she has, what liberals think, and she, even if I tell her I don't think that, she always comes back to that, it seems like. But so it's like she's used to liberal is denying wanting an open border. Well, I happen to want an open border. It's not particularly a liberal position either. I mean, unions don't want open borders. Most liberals don't. It's separate, really, from liberalism. Some liberals want that, but it's actually more of a libertarian thing, and why I still would say I'm a libertarian. Open borders, right? Now, part of what's important about this is that when you can remember more than one argument, like other people's arguments, you always also remember more than one argument that you've had. When you change your mind, you can remember the old version, and then you can wonder, maybe I'd go back to that. Or you can even just not know part of the argument. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go on that, right? So an example of that is, for example, fewer immigrant. There's less criminals per capita among immigrant population, immigrants, than there is in the native population, right? If that's not true, I'd still be pro-immigration. Why? Because the motivators of me being pro-immigration are not related to whether it would the effect on criminals. If it raises the amount of criminals, I might support more law enforcement or something like that, because my motivation for supporting immigration, and it's kind of like when race separatists assume, I'm lying about that. Well, I'm part, I have 16th Cherokee and an 8th Polynesian and all kinds of different, European, English, and Scottish that were racist against each other. I'm already mixed in a mongrel, right? So when you tell me, obviously, you really do want to be like with people like you, it's like, yeah, that are mixed. So I like the whole Jewish urban cosmopolita. I'm on that side of the conspiracy. Sorry. So I'm pro-immigration, and the issue there, though, that I wanted to bring up is, a lot of people, and Amendment was saying, is like it's not convincing to the public. It's not a way to sell your position, and it's like I long ago I think I work on political campaigns, and the point of the campaign might be to do that. But there's a lot of people working for it to come. I'm just there folding envelopes or whatever, putting up signs. I'm a part of that kind of plan. So that marketing might be important, but I am not. When I'm on here, for example, I'm not creating an argument as a salesman. It's like if you believe that slavery was wrong 500 years ago and you had the internet and you were saying so, um, it wouldn't probably be as a marketing thing because most people disagree with you. And trying to convince people that think slavery is okay by appealing to the way they think about things, slavery is not okay because even though it is okay, here's why it isn't okay. I mean, that's not what I'm doing here in the 21st century. It's not about convincing you, it's about demonstrating how I think things work so you could learn that if you gave a shit to know why you're disagreeing with other people in your nation. And I'm here to learn about why am I disagreeing? Why are there people that think torture might be a good idea? Hey, let's have internment camps. This would be good just to blow this up because it's not perfect. Hey, the engine on our car is a little bit out of date. It's a little bit old. It needs some repairs. Let's blow the fucker up while we're driving it. I don't see the wisdom of that. And so am I trying to convince you to do something else? No, I see that as other people's role. This is the public dialogue. Here we're honest with each other, and that's why we can do it while we're not, and because we're not making a living off of it. Even if we monetize it, it's not our primary source of income. But of course, the degree to which it becomes more and more primary source of income, that's fine. But you become engaged in the game in a different way, right? And maybe you do even have an obligation to try to convince for a blah blah side, which is why I'm reticent to do that. I don't think there's anything wrong making money off of videos, but so far do not want to go down the road of having to try to accomplish something in that sense. What I think we're accomplishing has to be counter to that, where we are in this particular dialogue. When I'm talking about something like open borders, I don't care. Or if I'm talking about socialism, I don't care if it freaks everybody out. I've been saying this for years that everybody's socialist. And now maybe that's going to be in the mainstream thanks to Bernie. And we could say democratic socialism just means that you believe the post office should be public or whatever. And I've been saying that for years when people were like, but when you say that, it makes people think of communism. Don't do that. It inflames it. It's like, no, it doesn't. It changes the Overton window. You don't even know how it works. And so I'm not trying to convince people. And if a candidate was to claim they're for closed borders and stuff just to convince and pander to the public, well, that would be like Hillary. And that's a part of her I didn't like. And if somebody comes along and says open borders like me, I'll give them all the support I can give them, and that I can afford to give them. Would I, an interesting question is, if Bernie had ran third party, would I had voted for him? And I would say no. And I knew he wasn't going to, because I know the kind of person Bernie is, and he's not going to use the Democratic Party, and then bail to a third thing. And that's just not fair. Run third party or use the party apparatus. You really shouldn't use people's apparatus and then not take part in the fair rules, right? It's like playing a game of Monopoly and then doing something else to win though you lost. I knew he wasn't going to do that, and it would have been counterproductive, really. So would I have voted for him if he ran third party in the first place? Yeah, very likely. I think I would have. As it happens, I voted for Hillary and actually came around to appreciating her, at the end. Right before the end, I realized, you don't have to agree with everybody. And compared to other American presidents, I think she would have been competent. Like, I wouldn't be worried like I am right now. I'm worried that these crooks that he's going to put in, that they'll be less competent than like the Halliburton crooks, and that they'll actually destroy the entire economy, food shortages, and this kind of stuff. So I hope that doesn't happen, and I'm hoping to relieve my paranoia on that account. Now, the final thing is about the trend and about a lot of conservatives and alt-righties that think that this means they win. We're still here, right? The rest of us are still here. And, you know, if you're going to just force us and go, well, but this election means that we get to have an alt-right paradise. Well, no, we're going to fight you on that. You're going to find out if that's the case. And there's still laws and stuff. And if somebody breaks too many laws, even as the president, they might get away with it. But, you know, not necessarily. Depends on who your enemies are sometimes. So the trend, I'm fairly confident that the trend is towards more tolerance and more business, less war. And I think that this is still the trend. Now we're going to see a big spike in the alternate direction. And how big is it going to get to the point of like, well, see, it really was fascist? Or is it going to be duller? Is Trump's grifty grafter pay for play, is that going to cost us more than Halliburton cost us and Dick Cheney? That remains to be seen, and that gives us a big margin before it becomes really bad. So I think though he's going to graft the government and a lot of businesses and all these lobbyists that are running his transition, I think the fact is the real danger still remains in what I was saying, civil unrest, and the way he talks about things, who he's in charge, the ideas that they might think are reasonable, like, oh, we could just have internment camps. We did it in World War II, and people like that. And then the blowback from that, this could cause major problems. I also am worried that they will destroy the economy, whereas I think Hillary would have run it like it's run now, which is not fair, but also not collapsing. So if he collapses that shit, that's going to be a problem. So we definitely will learn a lot about the I was going to say infrastructure, but then we're going to see a lot about the nitty gritty of play politics, because Trump, as he said, he's been the payer to play, and he's still going to run the same way. And he said he's going to, he's kind of said he's going to do it that way. He's going to run a patronage scheme. And that works in politics and geopolitics and Machiavellian politics. That's a structure that has a certain stability to it, even. So maybe it won't collapse everything. But I think given his vindictiveness and to have a Twitter president, it's still quite disconcerting. All right. So that's all the notes. So there we go. So I'm from a different angle in my room now because we got the Linux machine going. So and it seems like the other broadcaster, because I'm going to continue to do some of the inset video watching and maybe some slideshows. And I wanted to be able to do it over here because especially any of the slideshows, it's like this is actually my main computer, and that one, it's not as convenient the way I have it set up. All right. So there you go.